everyone, it's Storytime with Jocelyn. Welcome to Storytime this week, and it is the beginning of May. So we're going to start a beautiful story today about the state of Texas, where Jocelyn and I were both born. So we're going to talk about the different landmarks and the different elements and the really cool things about our home state. And we're going to be reading it from a book by M. Sasek. This is Texas. Now, this is a really old book, not really old, but it is old. And so it was written in 1967. So there's some updates at the end of the book. And there may be even more updates now. But I think this is going to be fun. We're going to learn a little bit about different cities and different landmarks and different things in the state of Texas. So let's us get started with This is Texas. Let us begin. Texas, the Lone Star State, has 254 counties, 268,581 square miles, and 22 million friendly people. It was named for an Indian tribe, the Tejas, meaning friends. It was admitted to the Union in 1845 as the 28th state, and the state motto is friendship. The Texas bluebonnet is the state flower, and the state tree is the pecan, or pecan, depending on where you're from. And the state bird is the mockingbird. So here is the flag for the state of Texas, and here's our state flower, the bluebonnet, and then the pecan tree, and the mockingbird. The state song is Texas, Our Texas. Texas is the biggest state in the United States. It is a country in itself and a land apart. Everything you see in Texas is one of the biggest in the universe, or in the world, or in the nation, or at least in the county, or at any rate, the biggest in the town. Texas is one of the nation's largest producers of spinach, millionaires in onions. It produces more oil, folk songs, cattle, carbon black, natural gas, and tall tales than any other state. Now, of course, Alaska is now considered the largest state, and Tennessee produces way more folk songs than Texas. Here is a map of Texas in different cities. And Jocelyn and I are located right here in Houston, Texas. Now, Jocelyn's grandfather is a little bit north of Houston, Texas, in a little town called Gary, Texas. And we have family way out of Texas, up north. And Jocelyn and I are big fans of taking day trips to some place that you can't see on here, Waco, and of course, Galveston, Texas. Texans wear the world's most uncomfortable boots and are known to be the world's worst walkers. But who cares? In Wichita Falls, everybody drives a Cadillac. Now, there's some little abstracts next to some words and phrases in this book, because at the end of the book, there's some updates, and we'll go through those later. So if I say something that doesn't seem right, that's because there'll be a real answer or an updated answer at the end. But of course, Yes, we wear our cowboy boots or our Texan boots, especially on Go Texan Day right before the rodeo. And I don't know why we're talking about Wichita Falls, but this is the Amarillo Livestock Auction. Under the Stetsons and different faces. Texans love their beef. Under the Texas sky, different landscapes, approaching the Rio Grande Valley, grain elevators in the Panhandle, Stewart Beach in Galveston, that's still there, and Padre Island with its hundreds miles of dunes. And those are the different places. Boyoduro Canyon in the Panhandle is named for the hardwood cedar brush that grows there, Jocelyn. Indians made their bows and arrows with this kind of wood. The canyon is about 120 miles long. The settlers fought Indians here, and the early explorers and pioneers crossed the canyon. So did the gold rush miners on their way to California. It is now a state park. I don't think I've ever been there, but I could be wrong. The El Capitan rises to 8,078 feet. It was called the Signal Peak by the early pioneers because Indian lookouts made signal fires on the top. And this is west of Pecos. We also have different kinds of vegetation. This is the Botanic Gardens in Fort Worth with thousands of rose bushes, tens of thousands of plants of 2,500 different species, and more than 20 Pacific specialty gardens. That's in Fort Worth. Pasadena, the land of flowers in Spanish, is a flowing suburb of Houston, Texas. Oil refineries, meat processing establishments, and chemical and plastic plants sprout everywhere. And that is right off of 225 and 228, of course. Those are our freeways, some of them, highways. The St. Mary's Cathedral in Galveston, that's still there. Different kinds of agriculture and strange communities. Here's the cathedral in Galveston. You can tour that certain times of the year. A prairie dog town in Lubbock. And the largest cottonseed mill in the world is also in the city of Lubbock. Texas has the roomiest mobile houses. I've lived in a couple. And the hairiest goats. And the best shaved hogs. The juiciest steaks, I think so. And the humpiest bulls. The most statuette cows. You can see cows galore down the highway. And the wildest wild turkeys. Have you ever been to a mobile home? I'm not talking about RVs that roll around and drive. These are a little bit different. But Jocelyn and I lived in one before. Texas's wealth is said to be hanging from the trees, grazing on the grass, and stored under the ground. The conquistadors looked only for yellow gold in Texas, and they did not yet know about the black gold. Do you know what black gold is? Have your parents look it up for you. The most familiar sight in the Texas landscape is the device for lifting oil to the surface, the pumping jack. Sometimes they do not need the pumping jack at all. The oil is pushed to the surface by pressure. Here's some pumping jacks doing some oiling. And here is some of these places that, different places. So here is a farmer refueling his plane from his own oil well. That happens. And Texas has about 30,000 private planes and 1,430 private airports. We might have more. This is not one of them. Nearly 250,000 oil wells are scattered across Texas, and nearly 25% of all U.S. oil is produced there. Most Texas newspapers cover the oil industry. Got you a cowboy right here with his newspapers. Here we have the Houston Chronicle. Now, most of these days, there's still people that like to actually have paper in their hand to read the paper, but now you can actually go online and read the paper that way as well. We used to have a paper called the Houston Post. I used to like that one better. So here we go, some more farming and oil rigs and stuff. Austin is the capital of Texas. Its site was selected in 1839 in the middle of Indian country, and it was named for Stephen F. Austin, son of Moses Austin, the leader of the first American settlers in Texas. With its many offices and colleges, it is above all a city of politicians and scholars. Its present population, probably a lot more now, is 615,000 people. Now you got to remember, this was back in 1967. Now I believe the city has a lot more people. So here is a picture of Austin, the capital of Texas. And here is the Capitol. Now, Jocelyn and I has been there a couple of times. Ancient oaks and architecture of the period adore the oldest section of the city, which is the Bryn Mawr Block. And then Texas Capitol's capital, which I just showed you, 309 feet, is 7 feet taller than the national capital's capital. It is built of pink granite, and atop its dome stands the goddess of liberty. Construction was completed in 1888. Yes, Jocelyn and I has been in a building that's more than 100 years old. A couple of them. The governor's mansion. It has been the residence of all the governors of the state since 1856. And the Mullet Opera House, built in 1878. It was once the culture focus of Austin. The auditorium had 800 movable seats. The Opera House was in use until 1896. Texas has some 130 universities and colleges. The University of Texas in Austin is the largest, with a campus population of 50,000 people. It was opened in 1883. Now, it may have a lot more people than 50,000 now, and it may not be the largest anymore. Remember to keep in mind, the book was written in 1967. The rig of the Santa Rita No. 1 oil well, discovered in 1923, Jocelyn, on land belonging to the University of Texas in Reagan County, it is now on the campus, probably the only oil rig on academic soil anywhere. And that is the Santa Rita. Pumping oil at the University of Texas. Fort Worth, where the West begins. Jocelyn and I have been here. We love to go to the stockyards and see all the cattle go up and down the street. And of course, the trains as well. And every once in a while, we stop by some locations that were filmed on Walker, Texas, stranger. Fort Worth skyline. And in about 150 years, Cowtown, which is Fort Worth, has developed from a pioneer frontier post and cattle market into a modern industrial and culture city without losing its Western character. It won an All-American City Award in 1965 and in 1993. This is West 7th Street in Fort Worth. It might be a little bit different now. This is Casa Mañana with its metal dome, the first musical theater in the round in this country. This kind of reminds me of what Epcot looks like. Leonard's Subway, the only privately owned subway in the world, takes you from the parking lot to Leonard's department store. Now, I think there's some changes in this one. We'll find out at the end of the book. No charge. It is also the only subway in Texas where passengers might drown in oil. I don't even know if that's still there. Maybe that's the update. Will Rogers Memorial Center, which I showed you a picture of a while ago, features symphony orchestra concerts, fat livestock, and horse shows, operas, and the world's largest indoor rodeo. Rodeo is Spanish for roundup. The buck jumpers have a fairly easy life. They work for only 10 seconds, about 20 times a year. What do you think? You think that's an easy job? Six Flags is a $10 million amusement park. I believe it's worth more than that today. Between Fort Worth and Dallas. Now, we have more Six Flags in Texas. We have one in San Antonio called Fiesta, Texas. Here we're talking about over Texas. Texans have lived under 6 different flags. The Spaniards ruled the vast territory for more than 300 years, from 1519. The French founded a short-lived colony in 1685 on the Lavaca River. Fort St. Louis. When Mexico won its independence from Spain in 1821, Texas became part of the new country. After the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, Texas unfurled its own Lone Star flag and became a free republic. In 1845, Texas joined the United States. During the Civil War, Texans fought under the Confederate flag, since it has been the Stars and Stripes forever. There are more than 100 attractions in the park. I believe there's probably a lot more now. This is, remember, back in 1967. Bank robbers about to bite the dust under the hail of bullets from the sheriff's gun. I believe this is part of the park. It is a show. And this is the Caparta Antique Cars. Now, Astroworld, which we had here in Houston, which closed in 2005, I worked there for a little while. It had this type of ride as well. And it was one of my favorite. We called it the taxis. Ah! Hi, Big Joe! Oops. Shout out to someone we love and know. Right, Jocelyn? On November 22nd, 1963, Elm Street in Dallas was the scene of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The cross marks the spot where the president was shot. The shots came from the window marked by the circle. I'm not sure. There's no marks or anything. But this is the memorial in Dallas. Ah, I see it now. Okay, let me see if I can point it out to you. This is the street in Dallas. This is the cross right here. This is where President John F. Kennedy was shot. And here is where the window where he was shot from. Now, this is the memorial that they have in Dallas. I've been there, and I don't remember if I ever got out of the car, though. That's something I need to do one day. I've drove past it. I know that. So, Big D for Dallas. It began as a trading post in 1841, and its first customers were the Caddo Indians. Now Dallas trades with the whole world. It is the financial hub of Texas, and it has more banks and insurance companies than any other city in the state. It is a leader in culture and fashion, too. And one of my mom's favorite old dramas, Dallas. Your parents would know what that is. The deposits in the Bank of Dallas total $16 billion. I'm pretty sure it's a lot more now. And if you think that's enough and don't want to add to it, you can leave all your money at Neiman Marcus, one of the most elegant stores in the world. Is it still? We're still in Dallas. Here is Big Tex with his 75-gallon hat, the biggest Texan of them all, welcoming visitors at the State Fair of Texas, held in Fair Park. Now, there's something that we have to update at the end of this book about that, but he's still there, I think. In Texas, you'll find London, Paris, Athens, Moscow, Nazareth, Roma, and Milano, but no Venice. However, it has San Antonio with its gondolas on the San Antonio River Walk. One of the greatest attractions of San Antonio is the San Antonio River Walk. Now, I like to take Jocelyn there, but sometimes it can be a headache because of how to get her down with her wheelchair. Now, that's not the problem. But some of the places you want to go to, like this ice cream shop, I have to go all the way around if I have Jocelyn with me. I can't go up the little steps that go up to the ice cream shop because there's no way in the back. So that's some of the fun things to think about. San Antonio still regains some of the romantic charm of old Spain. With its eventful past and cosmopolitan air, it is one of the most pleasant places in Texas. Industry, electronics, aircraft, oil, cattle, chili powder, you name it. It is also the site of the Army's largest military base and has more retired generals among its residents than any other American town. Now that might have changed. There's a little asterisk right there. The picturesque San Antonio River wends its way 20 feet below street level through the heart of the city. The River Walk. The Paseo de Rio, lined with tropical plants and Mexican, Italian, and Chinese restaurants, take you to the unique or decent theater where the audience sitting on grassy seats on one bank watches the shows on a stage on the other bank of the river. There's a lot of fun things in San Antonio. The governor's palace, dated back in 1749, was the official residence of Spanish governors. It is the only example in Texas of early aristocratic Spanish residence. That's the governor's palace. And the governor's office and bedroom. San Antonio Bookstore. There is all you need if you want to start a long literary argument or to end one quickly. Now there is a little asterisk on the next to that one. So I hope that bookstore is still there because I haven't been to it, but I love me some used books and I love bookstores, as you can tell. But go easy on those fights. The lawmen in Texas size 2. And you got you a policeman. Just like what Grandpa was. Right, Jocelyn? One of our retired best. Mission San Jose. 5 of the 8 old Spanish missions still standing in Texas are in San Antonio. A mission served as a church, hospital, school, a fort, or an outpost of civil administration. The best preserved mission in the United States is Mission San Jose, founded in 1720. And I don't know if I've actually ever been there. I think I've passed it. Here is the famous stone-carved rose window. I may have been there. Mission San Antonio del Valero was founded in 1718, 2 years earlier than the Mission San Jose. The Alamo, originally the mission's chapel, became the scene of one of the most heroic battles in American history. Jocelyn and I have been there. During the Mexican War, a band of 200 courageous men, led by William Travis and Jim Bowie, were besieged there by several thousand troops of Mexican would-be dictator Santa Anna. On the 13th day of the siege, March 6, 1836, Santa Anna's troops stormed the Alamo from all sides in fierce man-to-man fighting that lasted from dawn to dark. Every one of the defenders was killed. Among them were the famous frontiersman Davy Crockett and his volunteers from Tennessee. Here is the Alamo. Jocelyn and I have been there. It's pretty cool. And there's a famous saying in a movie, "There's no basement in the Alamo." That's from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Here is a picture of Davy Crockett. And there's a song, Davy, Davy Crockett, man of the wild frontier. Woo. So 6 weeks later, rallying his Texas forces, General Sam Houston appealed to his soldiers, "Remember the Alamo," another famous saying. With this cry on their lips, 910 Texans defeated the Mexican forces of Santa Anna, numbering over 1,200. The Battle of San Jacinto lasted 18 minutes and won Texas its independence. Sam Houston became the first president of Texas, and "Remember the Alamo" has been the Texas battle cry ever since. The San Jacinto Monument, 22 miles east of Houston, marks the battleground. It's 570 feet high and the world's tallest memorial column. Now, Jocelyn and I have definitely been there. And she did once, when I picked her up, look out of the window at the very top. The San Jacinto Battleground is now a state park. It's moored there, not far from the monument, is the battleship USS Texas. Now, Jocelyn and I have been on that, but right now it's actually being restored, and it is in the city and in the port of Galveston, Texas. And I have pictures of her in front of that as well, because you could go right there on the pier and you can see it in the background being restored. There are retired veterans of the two wars. And here is a picture of the ship when it's in dock. Now, it is usually in water, and that's why it's got to be restored. They're going to have to dry dock it. It is very old. Who said Texans brag? This is a humble picture of Travis Street and Houston's tallest building. Not anymore. The Humble Building. If you could see it, that's it. But that is not the tallest anymore. This was back in 1967 in Texas, Houston, Texas. That's definitely different. Now, there's an abstract, and we'll talk about that later. To say that every Texan is a millionaire is just a tiny little bit of an exaggeration. For instance, they have only 125,000 millionaires in Houston. We probably have a lot more than that. And nearly 2 million non-millionaires. That's one me. The two Roman emperors who built the Colosseum would marvel at the sight of the Houston's Astrodome. It is the world's first domed and air-conditioned sports stadium. Its ceiling is 250 208 feet high. Its diameter is 710 feet. Parking is available for 30,000 cars. Now, that might be a lot different now, but we don't actually use it anymore, but we cannot tear it down because this is a historical landmark, and it's a part of Houston, Texas history. And it is considered one of the 8 wonders of the world. You can see it from the International Space Station. We used to use it for the rodeo, but after they built the Reliance Stadium, we don't use it anymore. So they're trying to figure out something we could use it for. I still think there's a lot we could use it for. It just needs a little TLC and a lot of restoration. The Astrodome seats 52,000 for baseball, 62,000 for football, and 66,000 for boxing matches. The roof has 4,596 skylights letting in the sunlight needed to play dry baseball. Day baseball. Why did I say dry? I know, Jocelyn. Mama doesn't know what she's saying. I think I'm too into the fact that the Astrodome is a big part of Texas history. If you know, I've talked about the Astrodome last year when I read about Selena. Her last concert was in the Astrodome, and I was there. So it is very nostalgia. I'm really hoping and praying they never tear it down. Once Texas was said to be so lawless that not even the laws of gravity were obeyed there, and they still not obeyed at NASA's Johnson Space Center, 30 miles from Houston in Webster, Texas. All U.S. space missions are directed from there. And so Houston, nicknamed Space City, our Houston Astros actually wear jerseys now that say Space City, was proud to be uttered by Neil Armstrong when he became the first man to walk on the moon on July 20th, 1969. Space Center Houston, the official visitor center of Johnson Space Center, conducts daily tours and offers movies, interactive exhibits, and live shows and presentations. Jocelyn and I have been there many times. I love to visit NASA. And if you go back on our channel, we actually have a special edition from the NASA Johnson Space Center. So if you can, go back to that and watch if you haven't already. So here, this was once something that was outside. Now it's on an inside building because that also was deteriorating. But that was one of the Apollo missions. Ships. Hey, Titus, Vesperus, y'all watch this. So you can see what Johnson Space Center looks like in this photo. This is where a lot of people that work for NASA go. I think it's really cool that here in Houston, Texas, we can control and conduct missions while the mission actually is launched over in Florida. And Jocelyn and I have been to that NASA as well. Tent Maker Creek Canyon near Amarillo in the Panhandle. See the cowboy down there looking for stray cattle? He works for the Marsh Ranch, and his name is J.C. King. If you can see him, can you see him? He's down right there. I've never been there, but if it's still there, we may have to do a road trip, right, Jocelyn? There are 250,000 farms and ranches in Texas. This is one of them. I'm going to tell you there's a lot more now. Here is the main gate to the Marsh Ranch. I'm wondering if that is still there. I'll have to do some research. The Marsh Ranch has 10,000 acres, 500 mother cows, probably a lot more, and 20 bulls. 1 longhorn, and 1 cowboy, J.C. King. I think I'm going to have to look this up because I've never heard of this, and I am a born Texan. There's a picture of a longhorn, and of course the cattle, and of course, whoever this J.C. King is, I'm going to have to look him up. I'm curious now to see if the Marsh Ranch is still standing. The King County Sheriff's residence in Girthy, which is a population back then of 224, might have a lot more, who knows? But that is the sheriff's residence. The town is also the headquarters of the 4 Sixes Ranch. Ooh. One of the largest in Texas. This is its branding iron. Now, I have heard of the 4 Sixes Ranch. I'm not sure if it's still there, but that's going to be some good research for Jocelyn and I as well. But here is a picture of the 4 Sixes Ranch and the branding iron. I'm not sure it's the largest anymore. It could be, who knows? But the largest ranch, oh, that wasn't the largest. That was the second largest or something. I don't know. One of the largest. It's probably still one of the largest. This was the largest ranch in Texas in 1967. I'm not sure it's changed. It is the King Ranch. That is pretty big. I'll tell you why in a minute. In Kelberg County, with its 825,000 acres, King Ranch is 1,700 times larger than the Principality of Monaco. This is the main gate to the King's Ranch. Now, there is a couple of restaurants that were called the King's Ranch Kitchen. There's one still, and I've eaten there a couple of times, thanks to somebody I love. And that is named after the King Ranch. Now, there's actually a special edition truck called the King Ranch made, and it is all based on the King Ranch in Texas. There are 500 miles of roads on the ranch. Wow. And with its 2,000 miles of fencing, a fence could be built along the whole length of the Rio Grande. The ranch has 350 employees. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more now. A 1910 stable fit for a king's horse. Now the ranch has about 500 horses, and they wouldn't all fit in. They probably is a lot more. Who knows? King Ranch has 65,000 head of cattle. The ranch developed the first breed of cattle originated in the Western Hemisphere, the Santa Grutetis, known to all cattlemen in the world. A cowboy may spend as little as $10 for his horse and as much as $1,000 for his saddle. I wish the horses cost $10 today. Because I love horses. El Paso, formerly called El Paso del Norte, the lowest pass through the Rockies, was traveled by Indians, Spanish explorers, and gold seekers. El Paso and its Mexican sister city, Juarez, are the two largest and oldest cities on the U.S.-Mexican border. Yalesa, at El Paso suburb, is the oldest town in Texas. Now, I've never been there, but I think that's going to be on my bucket list. Now, I've been to El Paso, but I've never actually, I may have drove through Yalesa. That would be interesting, though, to go to the oldest town in Texas. The world's only international streetcar takes you from El Paso in the U.S. to Juarez in Mexico for only 10 cents. Now, I think that's changed. There is an abstract for some updated information. But then they are just across the Rio Grande from each other. So you've got your Mexican city, Juarez, and you got El Paso, the Texas city. Juarez is a shopping paradise for American tourists as well as for the local Indians. Though many goods are different, the chewing gum tastes equally fine on both sides. Got a picture. I'm pretty sure that bus costs a lot more than 10 cents now. The Rio Grande in Brownsville. The Rio Grande does not look very grand, but what it lacks in width, it makes up in length. It is 1,896 miles long, and it forms part of the boundary between the U.S. and Mexico, and both countries draw water from it. The U.S. Custom House is on the left side of the bridge, and the Mexican is on the right. The lower Rio Grande Valley produces the juiciest oranges in the world. Who knows if it still does? And the pinkiest pink grapefruits. I love me a grapefruit with salt. That was something my mom did for breakfast. Cut it in half and just pour some and eat it with a spoon. Good breakfast. A song says that Texas was made by a devil who wanted to hell out of his own. He made it out of the sand and stones and a generous mixture of cactus, coyotes, tarantulas, horned toads, and rattlesnakes. Wouldn't he be surprised if he could see what happened when the Texans took over? This is the door to Wonderland in Corpus Christi. Now here is some of the things that were updated for Texas. So it talked about on page 7, if you remember, you won't know the page number, but it talked about the different cities. So it says, today Texas also produces more cotton, wool, mohair, and leather than any other state. And in page 8, it talks about today in Wichita Falls, you will see more pickup trucks than Cadillacs. And then today's Leonard's has become Tandy Center. Now, that is what it's talking about the subway. The subway itself closed in 2002. Today, Reliance Stadium in Houston is home to the world's largest indoor rodeo. I told you the Astrodome is it's still there. They're still trying to find out what to do with it. Today, bunk jumpers are known as saddle broncs, and these cowboys would likely claim saddle bronc riding as the toughest rodeo event to master because of the timing, the finesse, and the technical skills required. The Mexican Fiesta train made its last run in 1978, the year I was born. In 1986, it was replaced by the La Fabora, the Viper, a bobsled ride. I think that's talking about at Six Flags. Yep, that was what this was, the Mexican train. That's no longer there. It was, of course, closed when I was born. Today, Big Tex wears a different outfit. In Dallas, during the state fair, he received a new wardrobe in 2002 when he turned 50 years old. Today, Fort Hood, outside of Austin, is the Army's largest national military base, and Virginia, followed by Texas, has more retired generals among its residents than any other state. So they are not in Texas no more. They moved to Virginia. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a bookstore in San Antonio or anywhere in Texas that sells guns. Now, that's what was different about the bookstore that I got excited about, because this bookstore sold guns. If you noticed in the picture when I showed it to you, it says used books and guns. Now, you can go to a pawn shop, but we don't need to worry about all that. That's interesting. Today, Houston's tallest building is the J.P. Morgan Chase Tower. Today, the Astrodome, officially known as the Reliant Astrodome, is used for such events as concerts, high school and adult league sports games, and conferences. Houston's professional baseball team, the Astros, play at Minute Maid Park. The football team, the Houston Texans, play at Reliance Stadium, and boxing matches are held at Reliance Center. Now, we're not really using the Astrodome, like I said, for anything. We were at one point, but we stopped because of some of the things that need to be done. Today, the streetcar is not in operation, and it stopped running in 1973. And that was the state car that it talked about that was 10 cents that would go from El Paso to Juarez. So that is no longer working since 1973. Way before I was born. I was just like, it couldn't be 10 cents to go on that anymore. Well, that is it. And this is Texas. I hope y'all really enjoyed learning about Jocelyn and I's home state. Jocelyn enjoyed it, learning about some things. I learned a couple of new things that I think it's time for a road trip. So I hope y'all will join us next week for another story. On Tuesday, Jocelyn and I will be posting a special edition for Mother's Day. We haven't done one in 2 years. We did one not last year, but the year before. And we did it at the nature walk where my mom's ashes are scattered. So we're going to do something special. We'll still be in the house. We'll be reading a very beautiful story, but you're going to get to see a different part of Jocelyn's life. So I hope y'all will be able to watch that on Tuesday in honor of mothers. So we'll see you then. And we'll talk to you later for another story time with Jocelyn. God bless. Bye-bye.